I get to use a mic and everything. Thank you for coming. Thank you for inviting this talk. I wanted to talk about privacy because, well, I think privacy is important. My badge says JNP because I don't normally type my last name into forms. I do have to type them every so often. But let's talk about what we are really sharing with the world and what it means. About me, I write code. I build systems. I'm part of the application development DevOps pipeline. This is my day job. I also think about other things, human topics. So why talk about privacy? This talk happened a few years ago when I came across this great book. Bruce Schneier published Data and Goliath. This is about how society is governing and using our data and what attitudes we have about it as citizens, as all of us together, and not just IT industry, not just us as engineers, but us as people, us as citizens. So surveillance nowadays has become a business model. You've probably all heard, if you're not paying for this, you're not a customer, you're a product. Those logos are a major part of our daily life. We spend time, quite a bit of time, quite a bit of effort on these sites, and they're largely free or completely free, depending on where you are. So this happened. This happened, and internet enabled it, and it suddenly became big. So why aren't we thinking about it more thoroughly? Surveillance existed before we went digital. Nielsen surveys, anyone remembers what we were? They collected information from, 4,000 households in the country, because that's a representative sample, about who liked free television. 4,000 people filled out paper forms, and that was pretty much it. That's how TV program was decided. US Post Office always had our address information. It couldn't work without it. Credit reporting. Credit reporting is actually quite a big deal because they know what we are spending money on. They know what's important, and they know if we are falling on hard times. Finally, store loyalty cards. Anyone has them still? Yes? No? No loyalty cards? Anyone has a loyalty card where you actually put your name and address and phone number down so that they can contact you? People did that. I've seen them around for a long time, and I've actually seen people filling out an application. They are sharing this data so that the stores can market to us better, but they are also sharing this data so they can know us better. There was a story quite a few years ago when Target announced a family event coming up before the rest of the family knew. I don't know if you've heard about it. This teenager was getting advertising for baby and pregnancy products to her home address where she lived with her parents. And her parents were very surprised that their 15-year-old was pregnant. She hasn't told them, and she hasn't told anyone, really, but Target knew. Target noticed what she was buying. It was all on her card. They knew how to put this information together. So this is how we all went shopping. And if you slice it enough, I guess you're safe, but most of us didn't. Most of us do our grocery shopping at one place. And this is what it looks like now. When we go out, and Freebirds went fairly recently from a card to an app. A lot of stores did that. They are trying to get your information together in a digital format so that they control your location in the aisle. They know more about you, what you're spending. Google and Apple Pay come into place so they can see your purchases across the spectrum, across stores. There's quite a bit we are publishing into the world. Location, metadata. Facebook is famously capturing what you typed in but never posted. Nobody sees it but Facebook. You typed it into the form, it probably got captured, even if it never went into your actual stream. The stuff that you're posting as private you're sharing it with Facebook, right? That's the no-brainer. The same goes for all other social networks. They have access to it and they have full rights. Interactions. If you're out in public or in private space, there's probably a security camera watching you. If you're in office building, there could be a microphone watching you. It's perfectly legal. Employers can record it. Owners of a space can record it. In the building where I work, there is a sign in the restroom that says you're not allowed to use the phone in the restroom. Incidentally, the restroom is the only space where by government regulations you cannot have surveillance. You're mandated privacy in the restroom. You're not allowed to have a private conversation even there. I find this scary. I don't know about you. DNA and biometrics. Yes, if you've gotten a new laptop or a new phone in the last 5 years, it's probably bugging you to enroll your fingers or retina scans or something like this. You can change your passwords. You are not going to change your fingerprints. You are not going to change your retina scans. It started innocently enough, right? Technology came in as entertainment. So yeah, we can talk about what movies we like. We can share what fun things we talk about with friends, and we can publish it. This is public. There is nothing really to hide there. Your resume is public. If it's on LinkedIn, that's a good thing. You meant to publish your brand that way. But when it went into more private areas of your life, suddenly your refrigerator goes out on the internet and figures out what you like to buy, what you run out of, if you've consumed all the weekly beer allowance already by Wednesday, what your laundry machine is processing, if you have too much stuff there, too little, and what cycle is it? Is it delicates? Remote home control. If you hack into this, and it's easy to hack into this, when are you home? What are you doing when you're home? What are you talking about when you're home? Which rooms in the house are most lived in? Which rooms are in the house nobody goes into? All of this goes out. The listening devices, oh, they're scary. They're listening to you at all times. Alexa is a service you buy specifically for listening to you, but it's not the only device that listens to your conversations, potentially private conversations. We buy a tool, we buy a gadget, we expect to be able to turn it off, but it's fairly hard to turn them off nowadays, unless it's completely unplugged and the battery is pulled out, which we are not going to do all the time. It could be recording. It depends on the implementation. Okay. Have you seen this Barbie? It took the toy market by storm a few years ago. This is an intelligent Barbie. It talks to your kids. It talks back to them. It listens to what they say, and it responds intelligently. How does that work? The stuff your kids tell to the doll gets captured, sent out to third-party processing, sometimes outside of this country, outside of your jurisdictions, and the responses come back. This is internet-enabled Barbie, and there is no privacy around kids. There is no privacy around your house. This doll is a spying device. I don't know if it's funny. I think that's kind of scary. Because it wasn't the most popular tools out on the market for a while until people noticed, and there was some research put into it. You couldn't turn that off. You can't expect your 3-year-old or 6-year-old or even 12-year-old to want to turn it off. It's going to capture all the conversations around the kid. So Samsung TVs, same thing. You couldn't turn them off. They look like they weren't listening. They were supposed to pick up just the code words. They were picking up a lot more than that. What you were talking about in your private situation, in your private home, went out. Nest has a camera. It's going to see what you're doing. It's going to publish it, at least to the company that you're buying it from, probably to more than that. And the cars, the car technology is going to pick up everything you talk about in the car. All the conversations, on the phone conversations, everything you can find in France during those long commutes, it's all available to other folks. So, what's the commercial value of all this sharing? Those are actually new numbers. When I first made the talk a few years ago, Facebook was a lot less expensive, 300 billion, give or take. It's now up to almost 500 billion, and that's after the stock went down with the recent scandal. It's still fairly expensive. United Airlines is a big service, right? Who flies United? It's a major airline. They own planes. They own airport slots that are incredibly expensive. They are big transportation system in this country. They cost a tiny fraction of what Facebook owns, which is what? A bunch of computers? Not really that big of a deal. That's the value of data that Facebook has convinced us to share for free. That's the value of the stuff we are typing in and posting and uploading every day for free. They are not paying us. Is this scary? Okay. So what are we getting for the data that we are sharing every day if we are not being paid? If it was treated as a commercial exchange, well, you put up something, you get something back. Well, consider that. You are getting a service. That's pretty much it. You can distribute your data across the networks, across the companies, or you can stick with one provider. You're getting the same service. There is no differentiation. It's close to nothing. You get the same services no matter how truthful or loyal you stay to a particular service. You can use Facebook once a day and type nothing. Just read. You are getting the same service as everybody else. I say user value that we are all getting is close to zero. All right. So how do the companies use those data? Well, the simple case is price discrimination. Price discrimination is easy, right? You go to Starbucks, you ask for a bigger cup of coffee, you get charged more. You ask for whipped cream on top, you pay more. Fair trade coffee is, what, another dime? That's actually fair and that's easy. They use those techniques to identify who is willing to pay more. But a few years ago, Apple users got higher priced properties listed higher. Why? Well, because we figured Apple computers were expensive. If you are browsing on an Apple device, then you're probably prepared to pay more. They weren't actually showing different prices. We were pulling more expensive properties to the top. You could find the less priced things. They think it's bad. There was a scandal. It's price discrimination. It's a marketing technique. I'm not sure if that's bad. So here is another one. Staples.com in 2012 figured that it'll charge more for users for whom it's harder to go to their competitors in person. Is this good? No, that's not nice, but we can handle it. It's just money and it's not a big difference. How about this? Micro-targeting in advertising. If we know enough about you, we can sell you just the right idea when we want to sell you the right idea. This is actually the Cambridge Analytica scandal is all about. If we can micro-target people and appeal to their thoughts, to their dreams, to their hopes and biases, we can be so much more successful in selling them whatever it is we are trying to sell them, in manipulating their behavior, in getting them to the polls and voting just the right way. By the way, Republicans didn't start that. That started in the previous 8 years. Knowledge is power. It's good that we have all this data because people are a big unknown. We fail at knowing what we do as a society, as a group, as each individual person. People are unpredictable, all 7 billion of us. It's actually helpful for good things to have detailed data about people. But at the same time, it's complicated, right? So there are efforts in medical research, in things as simple as Yelp that recommends restaurants, gather data from many users, learn something from patterns, learn something from big data sets. But then there is a concern about privacy. That's 2010. Zuckerberg, a lot younger than he is now. And privacy is no longer a social norm. Is it? He's kind of right. Privacy is not a social norm back then. We didn't understand what we were giving away because it didn't matter up to then, because it wasn't happening on such a significant scale. Now it is happening, and it's time to become aware, but change is slow. Technology is a lot faster. We already have the capability to gather this and to process it, to benefit from it. We just don't have the understanding of where it takes us. So let's talk about why privacy is important. A lot of the time I ask people why we are publishing the minutiae of their days, why we are sharing these things that don't necessarily make an interesting story, but will come or have a potential to come back and bite them later. And the usual answer, the typical answer that I've heard is, I'm not doing anything wrong. What do I have to hide? You don't have to hide, but you do need space to be private. I'm going to ask you to read this. This is a lot of reading. Bruce Schneier is a leading researcher on privacy and security. He is the author of many books that concern security first, privacy second. I recommend his blog and his books. So, should I move on? This is another academic researcher, professor of law and technology, talking about why privacy is important. Having privacy is what allows us to be ourselves. Again, it's hard reading. Please indulge me. Lack of privacy means reduced scope for self-making. It's reduced scope for creativity. It's reduced scope for being yourself. It's reduced scope for human development. Thank you. Thank you for reading. This is not the end of the talk. This is the end of the hard part. But I'm glad you're enjoying the picture. Privacy means different things to different people. There is a concept of privacy that is complete anonymity. Complete anonymity is nice. I think we are way past that. Driver's licenses are here with us to stay. James Comey, an FBI director as of a couple of years ago, thinks that it doesn't exist, but being compelled to share something is not the same as not having control over sharing. Sonia Sotomayor has a different idea. Awareness that the government may be watching chills associational and expressive freedoms. Privacy is intimately connected to freedom. That's the point of the Fourth Amendment. Remember, all of this is available to the government and to commercial interests, not necessarily benevolent. Well, the government is supposed to be benevolent, but it's not always. Commercial interests do not have to be benevolent in concept. Do not be evil. The tagline that Google chose is unique. They don't have to be bad. So, 7 simple steps to control your privacy. From Arvind Narayan, a researcher on de-anonymizing data. Good luck with that. For everyone who tells you you don't have to use Facebook or share anything there, this is the list you hand them. You don't have to use Facebook or LinkedIn, but there is no real way to live in a society today without being part of a social media circus. What changed? The things that we used to have, ephemeral conversations, interactions, events, locations and movements, all of this used to happen in the moment and then remain in memory of people who were present. Except now there are cameras. If you ever said something, it's going to be recorded. It may end up on YouTube if you decide to run for office. It may end up on a different video or audio or quote sharing site if you do something else, if you become a donor or if you gain a position. Everything is available for sharing. When secrecy is truly paramount, figure out a way to have an interaction that's still ephemeral. The phone companies are not allowed to record sound. They do record everything else. So if you're calling your lawyer, if you're calling a doctor that, among other things, does, I don't know, things that you might not want to broadcast to your employer, all of this is fair game for companies to publish. We used to have stuff that wasn't ephemeral, and that was sideways of life, court proceedings, recorded performances, letters and diaries, things that you wanted to publish. Diaries, maybe not while you're alive, but maybe later. Diaries, still stuff that makes it into books. They were exceptions. Now our everyday is recorded. I'm on video right now, you are too. Americans always cared about privacy, except we never knew how to talk about it. Fourth Amendment is there. It's been there from the beginning, except it's not very clear. How do we take it to the 21st century? How do we survive with this in the day of sharing and working with loads of information automatically? We don't have data privacy laws in the US. We have exceptions to not having data privacy, occasionally. Right to privacy is implicit, and we only regulate specific little chunks of data: financial, medical, and children. Children information is somewhat private. So when you click for your kids 13 years old, well, you gave that away. Subject of the data has no rights in respect to data. When you're publishing something on Facebook, they have all the rights and you've got none. If you've ever signed up for credit monitoring services like LiveLock, they own your data from the moment you signed up in perpetuity. You can leave, you cannot get your data back from them. They are going to have it. So other countries are doing better. Europe has been looking at the problem of privacy for 20 years now. They have developed principles. We are looking at legitimate purpose, we are looking at transparency and proportionality. We can argue the finer points, but the main concept that I wanted to bring up is we built an infrastructure. We are building ways to think about it and to talk about it. We aren't. We are just giving it away for free. Consent is required. As a subject of the data, you actually have some rights. Once you give consent, it can be withdrawn. It's important, because here, once your data is out there, it's out there. Business here has zero cost of data ownership. If you ever put something on Google, it's going to be available. Google has zero incentive to ever delete it. It could have been a mistake. It could have become not true, or it could have been not true to begin with. There is no cost of carrying it forward. Yes, you can sue. It's expensive, and you're not likely to. Security breaches are close to free for most companies, except the very biggest when you have a PR crisis. And lots of companies have a lot of data without us knowing them by name. So what do we get for privacy versus surveillance as a business model? It's nice to have Facebook for free, isn't it? But what we are giving up is freedom and security in our own person. We're also giving up progress because it's hard to move from here. We are in a stalemate with the industry and with the government that can become overzealous and can compel corporations to share what they have about us. And now I think that's it. This talk is inspired by this book. I recommend reading it. I'm actually not repeating any of the book. You still have to read it. The stories in the book are different. Thank you.